Hey, good morning, everyone. This is Dr. Brown. Hey, I hope you're doing great. I am so excited to talk to you this morning about Blakeman Chapter 2 because Blakeman Chapter 2 is the core of what you're going to need to understand strategic planning and writing, and also how this works in an integrated marketing context. Okay, so you want to make sure that you understand how this is working and the basic concepts. Not only that I'm going to talk about, I'm going to give you conceptual and some pro examples, but also make sure that you look at this in the text. Okay, so when we start talking about approaching a communication project strategically, there's an overarching way of looking at this. Okay, think of it like an outline or simple steps. When I was an undergrad, we learned steps called rope or rose or rosy. There's even one called frosty. Okay, the idea here is research, objectives, planning, evaluation. Okay, that you start with research, you set your objectives, you do your planning or your tactics, your actual content, and then you have a way to evaluate. Uh, Blakeman Blakeman is going to talk a little bit about more 7 steps, but these steps are basically the same concept as Roper Rosie. We're going to look at these in just a second. But first, I want you to pay attention on page 27 when we start thinking about research as the first step. Blakeman's going to talk a little bit on page 27 in chapter 2 about different ways to approach research. As a master's student, you should understand how to do basic academic and applied research. All right? So there's categories. In categories of academics, we say qual or quant. Okay? Qual basically being human facing research, quant basically being numbers driven research. Okay, right? There's formal, informal, implied, primary and secondary. Okay, take a look at what Blakeman suggests in chapter 2 here. But I tell you what I use very often, okay, in my applied kind of research that I do as a faculty member and as a consultant. I focus very heavily focus groups, polls, and using social media data to help me determine more about my audience. Okay, this is not a research class, but you'll need to understand you're going to need some basic audience research before you do anything in strategic planning and writing. Okay, so one thing to think about, I've used this in a class before. Let's say that the scenario is that, as we know from some data, that pet ownership in the United States has skyrocketed over the last 20 years. It is particularly skyrocketing among a certain younger demographic. You may be a pet owner, okay? So mobile pet care, mobile pet grooming services have grown and grown and grown and grown. Okay, but how would you approach if you wanted to start this kind of business? How would you approach this from the research side? Like if you wanted to start a mobile pet grooming business, let's say in the Dallas-Fort Worth area or Houston, San Antonio, some of the bigger cities in Texas. Okay, how would you get new clients? How would you use qual research, quant, data analytics, old school interviews? I want you to think about why it would be important for you to have this data before you just jumped out maybe and took a small business loan and tried to create this business. You're going to need some marketing, public relations, advertising, social media work. But before you go there, you've got to know a little bit about your audience. So let's talk a little bit about Blakeman's kind of broad strategies. I said rope, research, objectives, planning, evaluation is one way to look at this. Blakeman breaks down in this chapter uh, these key steps, starting with a situation analysis. Okay, this is part of the research process. Okay, setting objectives, putting together a strategy, implementing tactics, and evaluation. You can see these steps in this chapter. Do not miss these. Okay, not just because it's going to be on the exam, because these basic strategies or these basic ways of looking at this integrated marketing approach can help you with almost any project, communication and otherwise. Part of what Blakeman's going to talk about, and something I do not want you to miss in this course, make sure that you look at it in the text on page 34 and following. Okay, we're going to talk about primary and influencing markets. Okay, or another word for the primary market is a target market. This ought to make total sense to you. Okay, if I'm starting a pet grooming business, my primary or target market are the people that I want to bring the pets to my mobile grooming service for grooming. It's that easy. Okay, all right. I can know some about this target market. I can know their demographics, psychographics, geographics, even their sociographics. So much data out there on what certain age groups prefer from social media side. And using this combined data, I can create a behavioristic profile. Okay. Understanding your target market, or whom you want to speak to, whom you want to sell to, who you want to influence, is strategic communication 101. It's called segmented market. And you have to understand your target audience or market. In PR, we call this our primary public. Okay, if you do not understand your audience, you are destined to fail. Okay, and this is where a lot of people who don't have training or haven't thought about this, they often fail to think about their primary or target market. Okay, make sure that you look at this in the text. The second part of this is what's called the influencing market. It's often also called secondary, gatekeeping, anything like that, okay? And these are the people that are going to influence your primary customer in a buying or thought process decision, okay? So the question is, who influences your primary and what are their tendencies? We can actually market to an influencing audience, okay? Or as we see these days, we ask an influencer who already has an audience to get to that primary group we want, okay? This is like social media marketing 101, one of the strongest ways to do organic and story not organic, more paid advertising on social media is to hire an influencer, okay? Let that influencer talk about your brand, okay? I know in my world, okay, I have several things that I like to do when I'm not working at tech. Most of those activities are outdoor. So there are people that I follow, and if those people that I follow on YouTube or Instagram, okay, if they promote a product or review a product, I'm likely as a consumer to at least consider that brand, okay? So again, remind you, your primary audience is the people you want to do something, buy something, vote something, attend something. Your influencing audience is who's moving, or as it sounds like, just like on social media, it's influencing how your primary thinks. Do not miss this. Primary or target audience, secondary or influencing audience, okay? When I'm putting together a profile, Blakeman has, you saw this target market wheel. I'm looking at things like demographics, psychographics, challenges and channels. I just like to kind of put together a snapshot of my audience. And when I'm doing consulting, as I often do, I'll often do this for my client to help them understand who their particular target is. Okay, so let me simplify this, and then I'm going to give you a professional example that is hot and current, right? I can't wait to tell you about this one. Okay, so let me simplify chapter 2. Good integrated marketing starts with research. There's several types. You can take strategic steps to learn your product's place, okay, and to learn about your audience. You need to take steps to identify your target market and how they are going to behave, and also your influencing market. You can put together a profile or a behavioristic profile, but segmenting your audience helps you focus. You guys, class, students, okay, the individuals of this class, professionals, segmenting your audience and specializing communication based on your target's preferences is communication 101, audience segmentation. Now, I'm going to finish up from a piece of information from the pro seat, okay? I have in front of me, I'm going to show you old school legal pad. Okay, on this legal pad is a breakdown of my client's audience for an upcoming event. I do a lot of consulting in the summer. I am right in the middle of a consulting project, okay? And what I'm doing is helping do internal marketing for a nonprofit convention. Basically, this is inside sales, okay? So 20, 30,000 people coming to one location, okay, from around the world. They're all tied to this nonprofit, okay? They're going to vote on business, and they're going to have sessions, and there's going to be an expo area, right? Right. So inside this organization are different groups that want this audience, this broad audience's attention, okay? So it's my job to understand the target audience and to make this internal entity, to amp this internal entity to the audience and specifically to a target audience. Okay, so I have here on my notepad the demographics and psychographics of not only my target audience, but of the large audience attending this convention. Okay, like I said, 20 to 30,000 people. Okay, I'm really only after about a quarter of that audience. If I get a quarter of that audience to engage with me, we have success. Okay, so my primary audience is a little bit of a flip. Okay, I know the demographics, right? I know where they're from. I know their ages. I know their affiliation, how long they've been with the organization. And then I can start to drill down into social media preferences and things like this. Okay, so my primary audience, okay, for this convention, inside sales, I want people engaged with my particular booth, okay, and everything tied to that booth, and every activity tied to that booth, right? So I know from my audience research that I'm looking at females between 35 and 65 are most likely to be involved in this experience, okay? The influencing audience, okay, so that's my primary. The influencing audience is actually the partners of these females. Often these people travel as couples to this particular convention, who are not as interested in what I'm inside selling at this convention, but are excited when their partners, their female partners, take a part of this and get engaged in this, okay? So my primary audience is female, 35 to 55. Influencing is male. And as I found, some older females that are going to attend this, who the younger females in this situation are watching. Okay. All right. As I'm thinking about this audience profile, okay, this impacts the type of content that I create on a daily basis: social media, booth content, booth activities, okay, that I'm putting together for this organization. So, what I want you to think about is this is not just from a text, sweet by and by, right? I'll have to learn this for a graduate course. I'm using the same strategies and tactics that I'm talking to you about and Blakeman's talking to you about as a professional consultant, professional paid consultant for this nonprofit to help them do inside sales at an international convention. It's the same concepts, okay? And I actually teach their staff how to do this. And then, of all crazies, I'm actually going to this convention and I'm directing their social media team where we will pull daily fresh content, not canned content, but daily fresh content during this annual convention. I have a huge team. But anyway, so I share this with you to say this is the kind of basic audience segmentation that I think about as a consultant, and it is not just from a text. So that gives you a little bit of overview of Blakeman 2. I'm sorry this went a little bit longer. I wanted you to get the pro example in just so that you can see how important this is for you and how you can apply this in your current workspace or your future workspace. Hey, this is Dr. Brown, Blakeman Chapter 2, segmented audience. I know you're going to get it. Talk soon.